Hello, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of the Top Cut Podcast. I'm Sonny, here hosting with
your boy Caleb. Woo!
We want to thank everybody for joining us today. Today is Tuesday. Is that June 1st?
I think.
Should be.
Check the calendar.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at remembering days. Everything's just kind of
flows together, yeah.
Yeah, June 1st.
All right, you're listening to today's episode on Tuesday, June 1st. We are coming to you. This is episode 8. Today we're talking about Lightning Overdrive more. I know, we're milking it. We're gonna talk about the best decks post Lightning Overdrive, which decks we think got better, which decks we think are gonna be at the top of the meta. We're going to talk about the most interesting decks Lightning Overdrive. Some decks that have gotten some support, some decks that are, are going to see probably more play that you probably should be prepared to see. And then we're going to talk a little bit at the end about what our favorite decks of all time are. So, hope you enjoy. If you do enjoy, please be sure to follow us on Twitter at Top Cut Podcast. You can follow me at Dat Chumley. You can follow Caleb at, what's your tag?
At JamTheMan17.
Right. You can catch all of this on our Twitter account. You can find links in the description below. And anything that we reference here, we will provide links as best we can. All right. Why don't you take us into it, Caleb?
Okay, so to start with, as far as the
Best decks post Lightning Overdrive, of course, we got Dino, who got a whole new card in Scrap Raptor as a common.
A singular card that just kind of breaks the deck.
I wouldn't say it breaks it. It gives it new lines of play that it didn't have access to before, such as Synchroing and a Borreload Savage.
Yeah, but the new boards, the kind of board that this deck can end on, realistically, can be like a Borreload Savage, a Dolka, a 4-negate Appaloosa, like all at once, and their UCT.
Oh, yeah.
Which is insane. The deck could end on a good board before, but the idea of ending with, what is it, 3 or 4 negates? Well, I guess, yeah, like 3 or 4 negates, plus a UCT to Book of Moon their whole field.
Well, hold on, because Appaloosa before...
I think usually it's like a 3-negate Appaloosa.
Okay, yeah, well, let's just say it's a 3-negate, and then...
1 for Borreload Savage.
1 for Borreload, and then 2 from either Dolka or Logia, depending on which one they go into.
Just say Dolka, because that's generally the most common.
Yeah.
Well, no, because if they already have effect negations through Appaloosa, they can just do Logia. It makes more sense.
Again, it also depends on what you're going up against. If you know for a fact that you'll be fine with your 4 negates, monster effect negates, you could just do Logia to kind of help with negating 10 keys and stuff like that. Or again, it depends on what you're going up against. Do keep in mind, this whole board still dies to Dark Ruler No More.
Well, yeah, but that's because Dark Ruler No More is just kind of one of the best cards in the meta right now. Whereas, because it helps not only with the Dino board, but with some of the other decks we're going to talk about too. And the ability to stop something like that is, you can't just say the board dies to Dark Ruler No More as the out for the deck, right?
But I mean, what board doesn't just immediately die to Dark Ruler No More?
The Infinitrack board doesn't.
That's fair. Anything that's more Trap Alliant.
Right. So, but as far as this Dino board, and then you also have the Abyss Dweller to stop anything that they could do in the graveyard, too.
Yes, you still have the option to make, instead of Logger Dolk, you still make Abyss Dweller.
I mean, you can end with like a Logia and a Dweller and an Appaloosa. I mean, it's insane.
Oh, yeah. Other options is Tornado Dragon if you expect your opponent to set a bunch of back row.
Right.
You have a bunch of options you got there.
Here's a card that I ran that a lot of people didn't. I ran Castel the Skyblasting Musketeer.
Yes, he's good.
You can look at me and say, that card's been phased out a long time ago. Why would you run that? Because I have seen Megaclops. And
I mean,
there's no really other way to deal with Megaclops.
Yeah, it's an auto out to Megaclops, but it's actually an auto out to a lot of problem cards.
It really is. That card's still good.
Oh yeah. There might be. I mean, for any one individual circumstance outside of Megaclops, there's probably another card that's better. But if you don't have those other cards, he's still a good option.
I think the versatility there, but
Yeah.
regardless, you're very rarely going to see something like that. The main things you're going to see are the UCT being able to Book of Moon their whole field, which is, as we'll talk about later, it is insane in this particular meta. The ability to go Logia or Dolga depending on game situation, the ability to go Borreload Savage, whatever you want to do, and Scrap Raptor being able to lengthen your combos and be that extender that puts this deck over the top is why I think that this Dino deck gets so much better.
Oh, yeah. I just wish Scrap Chimera wasn't $45 a piece right now.
It's only a one of at least.
Oh, yeah, it's a one of, but it's a $45 one of.
Yeah.
Let's see, the next we got Dragon Link, which were pretty much unchanged.
Yeah, pretty much. The thing about Dragon Link is that it didn't really necessarily take it didn't get any advantage out of this set, but the deck is already so good that you still have to acknowledge that it's post Lightning Overdrive, it's still one of the best decks.
Oh yeah, no, it easily. Then we have Invoke, Dogmatica, Shaddoll. Just when we say Invoke, Dogmatica, Shaddoll, we mean any variation therein.
Right.
Invoke Shaddoll, Dogmatica, Shaddoll, Invoke Dogmatica, all three.
Right. Some of them taking a small L, Lich Engine, whatever.
Yeah, just any, that whole branch.
Yeah,
it didn't change either.
The ability to use Schism to go into Winda, and not just Winda, but the ability to fusion someone on the fly, main decking Super Poly to handle whatever problem cards you need to handle, whether it be breaking a Dragon Link board or handling problem cards on your opponent's field, Zeus, whatever. That the ability to do that is insane. It helps a ton. So,
then also being able to just kind of lock your opponent out of their extra deck.
Yeah, I think
not actually lock, but kind of a
pseudo lock. Yeah,
lock.
It really is a control deck of choice, this format, and I think that's not necessarily because the deck is insane, because the deck is good. The deck is, I would consider, a top tier deck, especially in the right hands. It can be played very well, skillfully, but I think because of the current meta that we're in, it's the control deck of choice because of the strength of Winda versus a control matchup. Whereas if you have something along the lines of, if you're like, okay, for example, in the previous format where you had VFD and it was a more control-oriented format, the deck was not as good. But now that we're in such a combo-oriented format, with some of the decks we're going to talk about, as well as the Dino, Dragon Link, Prank Kids, etc., the deck gets better because of Winda and things of that sort. So.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Next we have Outlich. Still good representation, but...
Well, it's still good, but it has low representation.
Yeah.
So, and this is more, when we say low representation, it might still be a commonly played deck at your locals level, or even if, I know, for example, that yesterday in Mississippi, which is not, it's about a 3.5, 4 hour drive from where we are, they had a case tournament over in Mendenhall, and they had, I talked to a friend that went, neither of us went, but I talked to a friend that went, and they said that they saw a pretty high Eldritch representation rate. I know we were looking at the Chalice Line Monthly, and they had a high representation rate. But it hasn't been high representation at the extravaganzas. Take what you will from that. The extravaganzas are not the end-all, be-all of the format.
Of course not.
The format's a lot larger than that, but it is the only Konami-sanctioned events right now.
And that's 9 times out of 10. That's what Konami uses to determine what gets hit on the ban list and what doesn't.
Yeah. So what do you think is the reasoning behind the low representation here? Because the deck is a good deck. It's just not seemingly being played a ton.
I think a small part of that is just people aren't liking the deck, maybe. Just personal preference changing, that kind of thing. Another possibility is just like maybe everybody's just preferring Shaddoll Dogmatica for control. I mean, I've really got...
It does make sense that if Shaddoll Dogmatica Invoked is the control deck of choice for the format, you obviously have one that's also good, but not the deck of choice.
Yeah. Whether it be just due to, the player base's personal tastes, as opposed to whether or not which deck is better. Because I know you just recently decided you didn't want to play Eldritch anymore.
Yeah, I was actually running the deck up until very recently, and I pulled it apart. And I think a lot of the reason is that the deck is so grindy. For better or worse, it's both the best and worst quality of the deck. In my personal opinion, yes, the Eldritch engine can go forever. But the issue is it also can, in some instances, take forever to end a game, which can be, again, a good thing or a bad thing. So sometimes in Eldritch decks, especially in a mirror match, you'll find that while yes, it is a very skillful and rewarding deck to a good player, it's a very grindy game, and not everybody likes that. So,
especially when game 1 takes 45 minutes.
Yeah. I think that the Eldritch engine is a good engine. It's a very skillful engine. It takes a lot of practice and testing with the deck to understand all the interactions, to understand all the chains that, how, it on something that, to somebody that plays Eldritch a lot, something like Activate Hakuero and Chain Scarlet Sanguine might seem like, just the normal average play, but to somebody that doesn't really play the deck or is trying to learn the deck, that's something that you kind of have to figure out, because understanding the resolution on the chains, understanding how to get the most out of your Eldritch traps, remembering to activate them in graveyard during the end phase, things like that, not forgetting that, is something that takes some time to get used to. So,
oh yeah, no, chain building is incredibly important with that kind of deck.
Yeah, and with it being such a control-oriented trap deck and it being so slow, it's got a low power ceiling. So, and when I say low power ceiling, and this is my definition for this is kind of something that I picked up from a friend. This is the expected turn to win the game. So, for example, Dino, you expect to win the game turn 1. Whether it's you go first on turn 0 and build your board, and then they can't respond, and then you OTK them. Or they go first, and you break their board, and then you OTK them. You're winning that game more or less on your first turn. Same thing with Dragonlight. You're either going to put up more of a board than they can handle and win that game turn 1, or you're going to OTK them. Or that's the goal anyway.
Yeah.
So, these are decks that have a very high power ceiling. But they lose, what they gain in power ceiling, a lot of times they lose in consistency. Whereas the Eldritch deck is incredibly consistent and incredibly grindy, but it loses an enormous amount of the power ceiling. Your average win the game turn is like maybe 5 or 6, which sounds really fast, but in today's metagame versus decks like Dragon Link and Dino, your power ceiling, where your power ceiling is turn 1 or 2, a deck where your power ceiling is turn 5 to 7 is a bit different. And I think that the Invoke Shaddoll Dogmatica deck, the power ceiling that you're looking there is like 3 to 4. And I think that 2 to 3 turn difference is the reason that maybe the Invoke Shaddoll Dogmatica deck is seeing more play. Because it's still control, but it's not. Yeah,
that makes a whole lot of sense. It can be control when it needs to be, but then it can also do combo OTK when it's time to do it.
Right.
Oh yeah. Moving on. Next up, we got good old Prank Kids. Prank Kids the big thing about Prank Kids is that it takes a very experienced pilot to do well.
Yeah, and when you're playing against the deck, you have to be able to identify what they're doing before they do it.
Yeah, to be able to properly hit what you gotta hit.
Right.
But with like a whole lot of decks, you hit that initial normal summon, that's it, they're done. For the turn, anyway.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, they do have follow-up plays, but a lot of that deck is predicated on sticking the first monster. They have other plays with like some of their quick play spells and things like that. But stopping the normal... And just as a disclaimer, I am not experienced against or with prank kids. I've never played the deck, and I've only played against the deck once, and I lost.
Oh, I've never even played against the deck.
Right, so, take what we're saying with a bit of a grain of salt.
A grain of salt? Don't you mean an entire salt shaker?
Well, I think that means you would take a lot of it. If you take a grain, you take a little. So, but, not the point. I think that the small amount of experience, it's a good deck. In fact, this is what won that case tournament yesterday. Prank Kids won the whole event.
Oh, really now?
Yeah. So we've got wins at, excuse me, we have wins at extravaganzas. We have wins at major events.
Wins at locals. Right.
Why aren't we considering this one of like the tier 1 top tier decks though?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think it's because the deck doesn't necessarily kill you on turn 0. Like, set up a board that you can't break on turn 0. Doesn't OTK you on turn 1. And therefore people go, oh, well, it's not a control deck. It's a combo deck, so it's bad.
Yeah, I think that could be part of it, is that it has a little bit, as a combo deck, it has a little bit lower of a power ceiling than something like Dino.
Yeah. But I think it's a subconscious thing that people are doing.
Right.
As opposed to actively thinking this way.
Yeah, and the deck is a little bit more, in my opinion, I could be wrong about this, but I think the deck is a little bit more difficult to play than some people might give it credit for, because I do think that there's a certain amount of, how do you put it? What's the word I'm looking for?
Complications?
The deck is a little bit more, like it's just like any other deck in that you have certain combo lines and you have certain combo paths, but so it reminds me of the Earth Machine deck, right? In that the end board is very unassuming. You look at that end board and you're like, is it really that good of an end board? But the advantage that you've built using that end board is what wins you the game. Which 10 years ago would have been amazing, but now that we're in so much more of a tempo-based game is not as overwhelming. So the deck builds a lot of advantage, and it builds a lot of interruptions on your turn between the fusion monsters that it can summon out. It does have that, but the power ceiling is not quite there, if that makes any sense. So, it is something that I would like to play more against, though, to get more experience against, because I feel like it is a very good deck.
Oh, yeah.
Especially post Lightning Overdrive, because of the way that the format's shaping up.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The next up, we got Zoo Brigade. That's Tri-Brigade, Zodiac.
Right.
Would you count Bird Up in this?
No, because I do think Bird Up is a different deck. I think this is more control-oriented, and Bird Up is more combo-oriented.
Fair enough. So just straight up Tri-Brigade Zoo. Got it.
I really think Zoo Brigade here is... it's a good deck. I've had debates with people about whether or not it is actually a good deck, and there are some legitimate points to be made here, which is that Book of Moon just ends your whole career.
Oh, yeah, and then Book of Lunar Eclipse even more so.
Well, the issue with the deck is that if you can stop their normal summon or get that monster off the field, a lot of time it just ends the turn. Because they don't have a follow-up play. The only special summon they have in the deck is Karas. Other than that, if I don't have another monster if I don't have Karas specifically in my hand to special summon out, and I normal summon a Zoo, or I normal summon a Tri-Brigade monster, the deck doesn't have a follow-up play unless you happen to have a bunch of back row in your hand. And then you're just opening yourself up to dying to Twin Twister or to Duster.
Yeah.
So, it's not oppressive. It's not unfair. and it's not broken, which just means that it's just good. So.
But I mean, if you go look at the OCG, Zubergate is the top deck, I think.
Yeah, and we had considered doing another OCG metagame report, but at the end of the day, we're TCG players.
Yeah.
But if you go look at the OCG metagame report, you're still looking at Zubergate taking up over a quarter of their meta. But an enormous amount of that is because their meta is so different. They have Crossout Designator, they have Max C. I mean, just that alone, being able to weed out the threats, being able to weed out Droll, weed out Lancia, things like that. Not having to worry about decks like Dragon Link, Call by the Grave being at either 2 or 3 over there, so you don't have to worry much about Eldritch. I mean, that makes a difference.
Oh yeah, huge difference.
It's a very different metagame over there. The deck is good over here, and it can top a lot of events, and it can win these events. But at the same time, if the format adjusts at all to account for this deck, then the deck's going to struggle again. Because I feel like these tournaments that the deck topped, it took advantage of people not realizing that the deck was going to be there and took the metagame by surprise. But sometimes surprise does not make a deck good.
And that's fair. I can't think of any examples, but I'm pretty sure we've seen that in the past where a deck only won this one specific tournament because no one was expecting it.
It's very reminiscent of YCS Philadelphia in 2011, right after the ban list when Plant Synchro was expected to be a dead deck, and it took probably 12 to 15 spots of top cut.
Oof, and that was after getting hit with by the ban list.
Right. Nobody was expecting that deck to be tier 1 at that time, and it still was.
Yeah.
So, but if we were going to make a post-Lightning Overdrive tier list with these 6 decks, I've got it typed up here. In your show, Docs, do you have a tier list?
Yeah, tier list.
Okay, so that's kind of my tier list. How would you do it, though? Because I'm interested to see the differences in what our tier list would be.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so
for tier 1 and tier 2, just...
Yeah. Okay, for tier 1, I personally would actually put Dragonlink, Dino, and Prank Kids.
Okay, so that would be your 3 tier 1 decks?
Yeah, and then the tier 2s would be Eldritch.
Any particular order there?
The order I gave.
Which was what? I'm sorry.
D-Link, Dino, Prank Kids.
Okay, that's interesting.
The reason why I think that is entirely due to, yes, Dino's got its thing, D-Link's got its thing, but if you were in a vacuum of just those 3 decks, the Prank Kids is just not going to be able to keep up because it's just going to get stomped on over and over because it can't out the board.
I don't know that it's that it can't out the board so much as I feel like its board can be more easily outed by those 2 decks.
That's what I had meant to say.
Okay.
I had a brain fart moment. Anyway, I'm thinking, a mile a minute. Okay. And then for tier 2, it'd be the Eldritch, Invoke, Dogmatica, Shadal, Supergade. The actual listing being Invoke, Dogmatic, Shadal, Eldritch, Supergade, in that order.
Okay. So, I feel like that makes a lot of sense because I feel like the Invoke deck is a little bit better than the Eldritch deck. And I do feel like Supergade is last. So, my list, I'll have D-Link number 1, Dino number 2, and Invoke Dogmatic Shadal number 3 in tier 1. I have those 3 decks as tier 1. I still think D-Link is the best deck until a ban list comes along and beats it, or until people prove that it's not the best deck. I think it is. Dino has the potential to be the best deck, depending on how people use the deck with Scrap Raptor. And I think Invoke Dogmatic Shadal being the best control deck of the format is the reason that it deserves to be tier 1. Because I feel like one of the control decks should be tier 1. Tier 2, I have Eldritch at the top of tier 2. Then I have Prank Kids and I have Supergade. So I feel like the Prank Kids and Supergade drawback of stopping the normal summon, stopping the deck is too great to put them in tier 1. Personally.
Which is entirely fair. I mean, but if you don't, then you also have to consider what if your opponent doesn't do that.
Well, then they're in for a bad time.
They're in for a real bad time.
Yeah.
But I mean, like the whole reason why D-Link Dino is in first is in up at the top of tier 1 is entirely due to the fact that even if you stop that and even if they don't stick that initial monster, like let's just take Dragon Link for example. Let's just say for the sake of argument, you solemn warning the normal summon of the Seyfert, just for sake of argument. Then they still have that. Then if they hard drew into they hard drew Black Dragon, they can just immediately go Black Dragon, keep going like nothing happened.
They have the extenders to power through regardless.
Exactly. Dinos, on the other hand...
Chaos Space, whatever.
Yeah, Chaos Space. Dinos just kind of go, cool, you destroyed my dino. Effect. And just keep going anyway.
Yeah, I mean, normal summon Ovi, effect, Book of Moon, Chain Misk.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, even better, activate Lost World, normal summon Oviraptor, effective Oviraptor Chain Link 1, effective Lost World Chain Link 2 to summon a token.
Yeah, you can't do anything.
Right.
You can't Solemn Strike the Raptor because chain blocking, yo.
Yeah.
Chain blocking.
The ability to not only chain block, but to turn around and have the blanket protection from Misk and Lost World, and then to combo off forever and build a ridiculous board. Dino could literally be the best deck this format because of Scrap Raptor.
Oh, it could very well could, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah. What about the most interesting deck? So we talked about the best decks. What I do want to talk for a minute about the most interesting decks, which is, I mean, these might not be the best decks in the format, but they're noteworthy in that they, how would you put it?
They're good, but the issue is that they just can't stand against Dragon Link and Dino, and they just can't. Yeah. They almost auto lose to those decks.
So some of the decks we have here are things like Drytron, Utopia, Trap Tricks, and even the new Plunders. The best of these easily being Drytron.
Oh, easily. I mean, they got basically they got a brand new Union Carrier in the form of Mu Beta Fafnir.
Yeah, pretty much.
And they got Diviner of the Heralds, who, Jesus Christ, Diviner of the Heralds.
The crazy thing about Diviner of the Heralds is that it allows you to... So not only now are you running Herald of the Arclight because you can use it to send Herald of the Arclight, but you can also run things like Intis to get free pops.
Yup. And then, then immediately go into a Hulk play easily because she's a tuner, isn't she? Or no, she special summons a tuner.
Really?
Yeah, like something about Diviner lets you, I don't remember if she's a tuner or
how
if
are we not prepared for this? We need to what?
Yeah, and I think Herald of the Orange Light or Herald of the Orange Light's a tuner. Let me double check this.
Oh no! Wow, Diviner the Herald, level 2 tuner.
Yeah,
wow.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So then you could go into a Halka Fibrax combo. Look who's back, boys.
Oh wow, that's wild.
But I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
So
the only thing holding Drytron back at this point was the Ben 10 limit and the Union Carrier ban.
Right. So in the OCG, they still have Ben 10 at 3, and they have Union Carrier still with Diviner of the Heralds and with a full 3 Ben 10s.
Yeah.
And the deck is still like, it's tier 1 or so.
It's like third place.
Yeah, it's behind Zubrigade and Virtual World because they still have VFD for some reason. So, but
yeah, OCG banned Zexal and Dragoon, kept VFD.
For now, I think the next ban list they'll ban him.
Well, we'll see.
Well, the thing though about Drytron over there is that the ability to cycle of Ben 10s, you play Vanity's Ruler. I mean, the things that they can do, they don't matter if you just play Max C. They just don't matter.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. No, dude.
And the deck dies to Droll.
Oh, easily. But yeah, no, it very much becomes a case of, but like just about every single deck over there becomes a case of, do you accept the Maxi challenge?
Yeah.
But of course, if you get Maxi and you have a Maxi in hand, you just keep going and then Maxi them on their turn.
Yeah. The other one. So, okay, wait. Is Drytron going to be good, or will it just be like a? I mean, how do you feel? How do you view the deck?
Oh, the deck will be good. Don't get me wrong; it's going to be a good deck, but I don't think it's going to be topping anything anytime soon.
And even if it does, it won't be like considered like heavy representation, top of the meta, top tier deck.
Exactly. It's definitely a deck you want to be prepared for. But because if you don't prepare for it, you're probably going to lose to it. But
you definitely could, yeah.
Yeah, but another issue Drytron's going to have is that even if you don't prepare for it, a lot of the stuff that you would use to prepare for other decks can also hit it.
Right.
That's another issue it's going to have, but overall, I think it'll be fine. It's a good deck, not a great deck. It's good.
Right.
Very strong, very solid. Depending upon what's at your local scene, depending upon how good the players at your locals are, you might even be able to run off a couple of tops at your locals with it.
You know what this deck reminds me of?
What's that?
PK.
Pure PK or PK Fire?
Either one.
Fair enough.
Because that deck is good, it's competitive, and it can win or top events for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't have that insanely high representation rate, and
it just doesn't have that oomph.
Yeah, it doesn't have it doesn't show up, like it might show up to an event, but it will not just like top en masse. It's a good deck, but it's not like, top tier.
Yeah, it's one of the, like, if you want to break the table 500, it's one of the decks you gotta beat if you want to get out of table 500.
I would even say that, like, to get higher up into, sure, you have to be able to beat that deck, but it's a matter of, how do I say this? It's a good deck. I don't know. It's just hard to describe it any other way than it's very good. It's just not top tier great.
Yeah, well, but I mean, then what qualifies the deck as being good and great? It's just one of those things that's, I don't think is possible to quantify.
Yeah. Because, like, it could have the same representation as Eldritch, which is not a super high representation, but you can look at Eldritch and be like, this is a really good deck. This is one of the best decks in the meta.
Yeah, it's got a je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's all subjective at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing. Also, we're not entirely intelligent, so that's probably also got something to do with it.
The next one that I want to talk about is Trap Tricks. They have a couple of new monsters, mainly Vesiculo and the new Link monster whose name is it Kularia? Kularia?
Kularia, yep. Kularia.
Right. So the Kularia is a Link 2 monster that lets you reset traps after you activate them and recur monsters from the grave.
Normal traps. Whenever you activate a normal whole trap card, instead of it going in the graveyard while she's on the field, you just immediately reset it.
Right. So activate trap hole resolution, reset the card rather than send it to grave.
Exactly. You can't use it that turn, but
right.
It still gives you another use of the exact same trap card.
Right, and the other one, which is the ultra rare effect monster, which is Vesiculo, it allows you to send a set spell or trap to the graveyard and special summon it from your hand.
So first off, it's an extender.
Right, and then if you control no cards in your spawn trap zone, you can banish it from your graveyard and target a normal whole spell trap in your graveyard and set it to your field. So it allows you to reset your board if your board gets broken.
Or if you're just behind and you need that one trap card.
Right.
Specifically something like Gravedigger's Trap Hole or Trap Tricks Trap Hole Nightmare.
Right. I think that these cards make it easier to be a splashable engine, but not necessarily like a great deck on its own. It'll still be a good deck and it'll be competitive, but just not top tier.
Oh yeah, and then for those people who like Paleozoics, Cambro Raster, definitely a big boon for Paleozoics.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can target a set card in your spell and trap guard zones in the graveyard, then set a Paleozoic trap directly from your deck. So that will let you switch out one of your Paleozoic trap monsters to the grave, without activating in the first place, to then set a more appropriate for the situation one.
I wonder if Trap Tricks Paleo would be a playable like combination.
Possibly, because they're both based around normal traps. But then you also got to remember the Amazement archetype does the same thing.
True.
And then you also have Phantom Knights with their Fog Blade.
I wonder if there's some kind of like a. So you have Invoke Dogmatica Shadal as kind of like a splashable 3 different archetype deck
that just work well together.
I wonder if there'd be something there with like Amazement, Trap Trick, and Paleo. That would be interesting.
Maybe. Because Trap Trick only needs 3 cards out of the extra deck. So that still gives you another 13. Amazement doesn't use the extra deck at all.
And Paleo, they use it, but not. I mean, you know.
Hold on, because Paleo's big thing is they're all aqua monsters.
Right.
Level 2, they can make Totally Awesome into Bahamut Shark. Over.
They don't need Bahamut. They just go straight into Totally Awesome.
Yeah, like hard make, not cheat. They hard make.
Right.
Totally Awesome, and then they can use it to cheat out Bahamut Shark if they really wanted to.
No, it's the other way around. Bahamut Shark cheats out Totally.
Oh, thank you. I always get that mixed up.
Yeah, no. Totally is an Omni Negate.
Yeah. But no, they can make Totally Awesome with their trap monsters, which trap monsters both summon out of their graveyard.
That might be a really interesting control deck.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially since the Amazement Administrator Arlecchino has fallen a ton in price.
Oh yeah, no.
It's fell in half.
Yeah, and he's I wouldn't necessarily a mandatory 3 of, but he's definitely minimum 2.
I bet a deck like that, Amazement, Trap Tricks, Paleo, would be a fun deck.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know if it would be good or not. I couldn't build it myself, but I bet it would be fun.
Yeah, I mean, if I had the funds, I would attempt this because this sounds like it'd be a blast to play.
It doesn't sound. I don't think it would be a super expensive deck.
I don't have a whole lot of money.
Fair enough. The last one that I really want. I mean, we could talk about Plunders. They got one new card, which is kind of good. It allows them to summon one from hand and then add one from grave to hand.
Well, okay, so the new Plunder Patrol monster, Black Eyes, the Plunder Patrol Sea Guide. He's one of the extenders that they were missing. The big thing that Plunder Patrols are missing right now are the other 3 ships.
Yeah, they're missing three of the different
attributes.
Because
they have, I think, Fire, Dark, and Light right now.
So they're missing Earth, Wind, and Dark.
Water.
Earth, Wind, Water.
Yeah. But basically, their whole shtick is we make these ships with different attributes, and then we can use our ships with different attributes to do something to your opponent's attribute of monsters.
Oh, okay.
But the issue is that they don't have all the attributes.
Right.
So they kind of fall behind if they don't have the correct attribute.
That makes sense.
Yeah, which they only have 3 of them anyway. But the Plunder Patrol Sea Guide is definitely...
It's a help for the deck.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a step in the correct direction.
But the last decent one that we wanted to talk about was Utopia. Utopia, so we didn't quite realize the applications here, but upon watching some replays of some stuff, it's really interesting to see the ZW Eagle Claw and the ZW Pegasus Twin Saber, which can negate monster and trap effects.
Eagle Claw can negate counter traps.
Yeah, so what it is the negate happens on resolution,
and Eagle Claw's effect does not activate. First off,
right. So because it does not activate and it triggers on resolution, you can, and it can negate in the middle of a chain. So if your opponent, say, a great example would be that Eldritch example that I brought up earlier. They can Haquero, chain Sanguine.
I thought it was Sanguine, chain Haquero.
No, it's Haquero, chain Sanguine, because Sanguine would resolve summoning Eldritch and Haquero would resolve banishing.
Okay.
So if you do something like that, then you can, on resolution of Sanguine, negate it. And then Haquero would summon, but then he can't banish because there's no Eldritch on field.
Exactly. Or you can just straight up negate Solemn Judgment, Solemn Strike.
Right, whatever you want.
Yeah, it's worded strangely to the point where the Yu-Gi-Oh-pedias So on Yugopedia, whenever they have a effect description, they kind of say it's an ignition effect or it's a continuous effect. It just says unclassified.
Right.
Because it's not a trigger, it's not an ignition effect, it doesn't have any triggers. It's just it's just this weird pseudo-continuous. If your opponent activates a trap card during its resolution, negate its effects.
Right. So the interesting thing about this to me is that it kind of makes it a splashable engine, huh?
It's a splashable engine in any deck that can already easily hit rank 4s, and a lot of them.
Right.
If the deck can easily make rank 4s, then this is a fairly easy splashable engine because the vast majority of the engine is in the extra deck.
Oh, I see.
Because it's all about the Utopias. The ZW monsters, also all the high-level ones, all have effects where if your opponent has 2,000 more life points than you can just splash some out of your hand.
Oh.
And then you can equip them. The other ones you do have to normal summon them before you can equip. But the new I forgot what it's called, Utopic Dragonic Ray or whatever.
Yeah.
Its effect can equip them from the deck. So that's definitely it makes them less of a Garnet.
Right. Is it hand or deck or just the deck?
Hand or deck.
Oh, okay.
I think. But the big deal is it can also pull them out of the deck. Which will let you equip the Pegasus Twin Saber or Eagle Claw.
So you can splash it if you can already splash level 4s.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a splashable level 4 engine to spare, then it's still just underwhelming.
Yeah.
In its own deck.
Oh yeah, no. It's well, okay, so like even with splashing it, you then still have to main the rank up magic spells. And you still have to main the ZWs to begin with.
Right.
Which is a problem in and of itself, but like I said, you have to already be playing a deck that can hit rank 4s like it's nothing.
Right. So that'll kind of round us out for the best and the most interesting decks post Lightning Overdrive. The other thing we kind of wanted to talk about was something that's kind of near and dear to our hearts, which would be our favorite decks of all time.
Mm-hmm.
So we've both been playing the game for a very, very long time, and we've both cycled through a ton of different decks, whether it was our main, whether it was a side deck that we were putting together,
a pet deck,
whatever. We all had our own thing. So I know for me, when I think of some of the decks that I've played, I think about some of the great options that I have, because I feel like when I list off the decks I've played, choosing one, I'm like, okay, well, I've got Black Wings that I played for better or worse when they were all on the ban list. While I was playing Black Wings, I kind of dabbled a little bit in Naturia. I built that deck. It was an interesting little control deck. I've got Hero Beat that I could choose from. I dabbled a little bit in Dino Rabbit. I did play that for a little while. From Dino Rabbit, after around that same time, I was also playing Machina, like pure Machina. After the structure deck came out, you could buy 3 of it, and it was like a full deck. I played Geargia after that, which right around that time I was playing Machina is when the Geargias came out, and you could literally play the Machina Geargia deck, and it was like a crazy OTK deck. And then after that, I transitioned into Karakuri Geargia, and shortly after we left the game. But when I came back, I played Dark Magician, then I went to Dino, got convinced myself Dino was going to get hit on the ban list, so I sold it. That still hasn't happened yet. Played Pure Zodiac, then I played Zulich, then I played Lyrilisk Tri Brigade, then Zulich again, then now I'm on Zoo Brigade. So, but man, I can't get over when my favorite deck of all time was Geargia Karakuri. I loved that deck. If it wasn't so power crept, I would probably put it back together.
Fair.
So, but that deck was a lot of fun. It was super versatile. It could combo forever. It could OTK. It could... I mean, that deck had a lot of versatility that was very underrated.
At the time, anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so I started with Black Wings because we both kind of went to a local.
It was a regional.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was regional, and we saw that everybody was playing Black Wings, and we discovered the meta, blah blah blah. Then we went to a local, and there was a dude there who was so helpful in helping us get into he explained the other's a meta, blah 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 blah.
Right.
Right now a really good deck that's really cheap to build is Black Wings, and he laid out a deck list for us. Even told us where we could go and get the cards for fairly cheap.
Right.
Even right there, just gave us some of the cards we needed because he had 18 copies of them.
Yeah, a lot of that deck was really low rarity, as Progression Series watchers have noticed.
Yeah, super helpful dude, and that's what got us in with. That's why we were both got in with Black Wings.
Right.
Then after Black Wings, I moved on to Junk Doppel because I couldn't afford the glow up bulb, and then I got a glow up bulb. The next weekend, the ban list banned glow up bulb, and Plan Synchro was killed off right as I got and built. So I don't consider myself of ever actually playing Plan Synchro, but I do consider myself playing a slightly downgraded version of the deck called Junk Doppel.
Right.
It used basically you'd summon Junk Warrior, effect special summon Doppel Warrior, sing 5, you get 2 tokens, and then you just keep going.
Right.
With Plague Spreader Zombie and Spore.
And Dandelion.
Dandelion was another big part of it. But the big combo was Junk Warrior plus Doppel Warrior.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, so that ban list that you're talking about where they banned Glow Up Bulb, that was the ban list that upset a lot of people because it's the first ban list that comes to a lot of people's mind when they talk about Konami wanting it being more of a money-oriented thing.
They very specifically targeted Plan Synchro.
And they did it to push the stuff that was coming out at the time, which was right around Order of Chaos. So that would be Inzectors were releasing, Wind-Ups were getting big, Dino Rabbit was getting big, and we get into what I like to call the Trinity format, which is those 3 decks. That was it.
Yep, rock, paper, scissors. If you're playing one, you could easily beat one, but you lost to the other one.
Right. It was definitely a very, very expensive format, but it was really kind of a skill intensive format.
Oh yeah. So then after that, that was about the time that they also released the Dark World structure deck. I bought 3 of that, and that was my deck for a while.
Right, because that was still a competitive deck in that era.
I was like, I can buy 3 of the structure deck. I already have some of the other pieces that you would need. I'd only have to buy like 1 or 2 other cards, and I could have the deck.
Right.
Cool, whatever. Then they released the Chaos Dragon structure deck. Bought 3 of that. Yeah, that's going to be a common theme. Is I could just get 3 of a structure deck and run with it.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Then the Chaos Dragon structure deck came out, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Wait, to make this competitive, all I need is Future Fusion and 5-Headed Dragon. I already have Future Fusion and 5-Headed Dragon.
Yeah.
And that was the point when 5-Headed Dragon spiked in price, because all of a sudden it got to the point where I was actually at our local, and I went first. I went activate Future Fusion, they went, let's go to game 2. That's all I did was activate Future Fusion, they scooped and went game 2.
Yeah, dude, that Chaos Dragon deck was really good.
I mean, because they errated Future Fusion, so it doesn't do this anymore. As soon as you activate it, you would you'd reveal 5-Headed Dragon, mill 5 random dragons. You would mill Eclipse Wyvern, Light Pulsar,
Dark Flare,
and Dad. No, not Dad.
Red MD.
Yeah, and Red MD. And then you would banish...
When Red MD was not once per turn.
Yeah, and then both the Eclipse Wyvern's effects would go off, and you would banish Dad and another dragon. So when Eclipse Wyvern was sent to the graveyard, you'd banish a dark or light dragon out of your graveyard, and then when Eclipse Wyvern got banished, you'd add that card back to hand.
Insane.
You would immediately activate Light Pulsar's effect to... No, I remember... Yeah, to banish Eclipse Wyvern and a Dark Monster to add it back to special summon it. You banish when Eclipse Wyverns, get Dad to hand, and then there was a way you could just immediately special summon it right there. So with one card, and that's just... a base little combo.
That deck had a pretty crazy power ceiling.
You could easily OTK if your opponent did not stop the Future Fusion.
Yeah, that deck, even like during that format, That deck was probably one of the strongest decks of that era.
Oh yeah, and I had and it was a $30 structure deck and at the time I want to say $50 5-headed dragon because everyone was trying to get them.
No, I don't think it was 50, but it wasn't.
It got high, but again, it's because everyone was trying to get them because no one kept them. I only kept mine because I just really liked the anime.
Yeah.
Let's see. Then after Chaos Dragon was 6 Sam. I bought 3 of the structure deck.
Was the 6 Sam structure deck before or after the Chaos Dragon structure deck?
I don't remember actually. But I did have both of them. I did just buy 3 of the structure deck for both of them. Oh, excuse me. After that, Dino Rabbit became, let's say, budget-ish. You could build it on a budget. Because they had Login Dolka 10s just come out. One of them included Rescue Rabbit himself. Tour Guides got reprinted.
You're right. The Dragons Collide structure deck was February of 2012, and the 6 Sam deck was June of 2012.
There we go. Anyway, okay. So then, in course of about 6 months, Dino Rabbit went from $1,000 deck to you could build it for like fairly cheap. Login, Dolka both got 10s. One of the 10s was guaranteed to have Rescue Rabbit.
They had a 10 that was guaranteed to have Tour Guide.
Yeah, and then Tour Guide was also reprinted in the battle packs.
Yeah, literally within, oh gosh, it had to be 3 months. The entire core of that deck got reprinted.
Yeah, the only thing that didn't get reprinted at the time was Sabersaurus and Kabazal, which were already dirt cheap because they're commons.
Right, they were DM era commons.
Yeah. Let's see. Then after Dino Rabbit, I switched over. The Fire King structure deck came out. I was like, okay, this is cool. At the time, though, my pet deck was Hazy Flames, and I was playing those.
Right. We've talked about this a lot on the pod.
Yeah, and then I kind of slowly shifted it over time into Fire Kings, and then a good friend of ours pointed out, hey, what's Barong's defense? 200. What's this other one's defense? 200.
Why aren't you running Rekindling?
And I slapped myself in the forehead so hard I got knocked backwards.
Almost got a concussion out of that one.
Yeah, I was like, why am I not? And then that's when I came up with Fire Dog, and it just got ridiculous from there.
Yeah.
And then
that was the deck you took to YCS Austin 2013.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I was fully expecting to see a bunch of Mermail, and I saw a bunch of Mermail.
Nobody else seemingly did. But
yeah,
you did.
I think because I was running Fire Kings, I just attracted them all to me. Then after that, I built Madolche, right when Angeli came out.
Right.
Because I already had all the stuff for it before. I just didn't have Angelis. I eventually got them. Built the deck.
The one card that I just have this recollection of you really struggling to get, because it was about a $40 card at the time, was Pudding Cess.
Yes, and I
remember picking those up for you.
No, it was Angelis you picked up for me.
Are you sure? I'm telling you, I really think it was Pudding Cess.
No. You picked up my new Pudding Cess. You picked up the Angelis for me before. It was all 3 Angelis came from you.
Okay, sure. I don't know the deck like you do, so
I do. It's easily one of my more favorite decks. Just because I like the design. Right. I like the way the deck plays. Anyway, so then I remember I was sitting there complaining to someone that, oh man, I just really need to get this. I mean, I've been having such these issues getting Pudding Cess, and I was opening packs, and I pulled a Pudding Cess.
Oh, that's funny.
While complaining about not being able to get a Pudding Cess.
Welp, RIP, there it is. Found it.
And I was like, oh, wonderful. And then I pulled an Ulti Tiramisu, and I was like, that's when I got out of the game, because my deck got stolen. Came back in, because you were like, hey, you should get in. You should totally get in the game. It's cheap now. It's cheap to get in the game now.
I lied. It was not cheap.
I got 3 of the Shaddoll structure deck, and then later bought a Cross Sheep, and then later spent some cash and got D-Link.
Yeah, it's an interesting path into the game now, because there's a few decks that are like good budget meta decks. And if you're not playing one of those, then when you get back to the game, you kind of play in jank. So, but you listed all those decks. Which one's your favorite?
It's either going to be Chaos Dragon, because I enjoy swinging around big dragons with high attack stats. Madolche, just because I love the way the deck plays. To Fire Kings, because the Garunix Nephtes loop.
Yep, I remember. We've heard that story. It's fun. So, okay, but you got to choose one, and I know what you put in your notes, but the excitement that you got talking about another one makes me believe you might change it.
It's again, it's a toss-up, but if it was a case of you can build one at full power, what would I build? It'd probably be Madolche.
Okay, because see, in the notes, when we were doing show notes...
Yeah, I said Chaos Dragon.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's Chaos Dragon, for sure. And then while you're over here reminiscing about Madolche, you started smiling more, and you started getting a little happier.
Yeah. God, Madolches are so much fun.
Yeah.
All I need to have that deck built now is a bunch of 1 and 2 ofs.
Yeah. Salons, tickets, promenade, things like that.
Yeah, I need like one more queen. I
have that.
Yeah, but you won't trade it to me.
We'll work something out
eventually. I need like 2 more Magellans, which are cheap. I just gotta find them. One more Angeli, just gotta find them.
Right. It's something that people don't keep them in their trade binders.
Exactly, because not a lot of people are playing the deck now.
Right.
It's a good deck even now, but not very many people are playing it.
Yeah. Well, that is gonna wrap us up. For once, we kept it under an hour.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. For once, we didn't meander around.
Yeah, so thanks, everybody, for listening. Be sure to catch us Friday when we post the next episode. We are here every Tuesday and Friday. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts. We're trying to get on Apple Podcasts, but they are being very ornery. So hopefully we'll be there soon. But in the meantime, be sure to follow us on Twitter at TopCutPod, at DatChumley, at JamTheMan17. Be sure to check us out. Friday, we're going to be talking about the Chalice Line Monthly, and we're going to be talking about the Animation Chronicles, maybe some other stuff. We're not entirely sure yet. But leave us a review. It helps. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast or follow us on whatever platform. That way you get updates, letting you know when we've posted. And be sure to reach out to us on Twitter, Reddit, whatever, and tell us what you think. We want to hear your opinions. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear you tell us we were wrong so we can correct ourselves. Actually, this reminds me, it's not in the show notes. I just remembered it. We did have a listener tell us that we were very wrong in our last episode about Book of Lunar Eclipse.
Oh, yes. It's not up to 2 flip 2 face-up monsters. It's not up to 2, it's exactly 2.
Which makes the card significantly worse. We were wrong. That card's not good. Don't listen to us on that. That was
because
we compared it to Twin Twisters. It is nothing like Twin Twister.
Yeah. The big reason why that's a big deal is because if you do activate if your opponent's 2 monsters and you activate that, targeting both monsters, your opponent removes one of those monsters, the card fizzles.
Yeah, it's not. It's tragic.
Yeah, example of Trident popping itself.
Right. So if they have 2 monsters and one of them is Trident, and they use Trident to pop itself or the other monster.
Yeah. Then it does nothing. So yeah, that's we do
less than ideal.
Yeah, we do appreciate the correction.
Yeah, because
I knew we were forgetting something about that card.
Yeah, that was like, man, this card seems wild, but nobody likes it. Why? That's why. That's why it's not good. That's why.
Yeah, like I said, I knew we were forgetting something. I was like, what are we forgetting about this card?
Yeah, the ability for Twin Twister to do up to 2 versus Book of Lunar Eclipse, which has to do exactly 2, is a big distinction.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you again, everybody. Please be sure to reach out to us. Tell us what you think. Follow us. And we love you all. We love you all so much.
Take care, everyone.